That's the power of one. If you're a veteran in crisis or know one who is, visit veteranscrisisline.net for free 24/7 confidential support.
Listening to KELP Las Cruces. Feed your mind, feed your soul with your local Christian radio station, 89.3 FM. Worldwide at KELPradio.com.
915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Frecco. We are broadcasting from the heart of the world's largest borderplex. We're here at the KELP radio studio in El Paso, and today we have Kenny on the board. Kenny, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, brother?
I have run out of superlatives to properly describe the wonderful time I have each and every afternoon on this program, 915 Talk. We're learning to love our city and love our neighbors. We're getting an education. Isn't that right, Mac Daddy Del Norte? Yes, sir. Yeah, so Mac Daddy Del Norte is running our YouTube Live, our Facebook Live. If you're at home, you can watch the radio. Just look for 915 Talk on YouTube, and you can watch what's happening. So, Kenny on the board, let's talk a little bit about geography.
Okay, let's talk geography.
I know you're passionate about geography. Isn't that right, Kenny on the board?
If I can get from point A to point B, that's all I care about.
But, you know, like we talk about El Paso.
Yes.
We talk about Las Cruces, right?
Yes.
But there's
Don't
a lot
ask
of...
me how to get there.
Yeah, but that's right. We learned that on a previous program. But there's all these other cities around.
Yes.
What are some of those cities?
Directly around us?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the ones that you always mention. Fabens, there we go.
Fabens, there you go. We have Fabens.
I was trying to go through your list. I'm like, it's not coming.
Yeah. Fabens. We have, what else do we have? Anthony.
Yes.
Mac Daddy Del Norte. What other towns do we have around?
I don't know.
Yeah, so okay.
Just, if you asked him where the fast food restaurants were, though, he
okay.
could tell you.
All right, so you guys don't know. Isn't that interesting? Like, we have this big city, and there's all these different communities around us. And for many of us in El Paso, we don't know a whole lot about them. That's the point I'm making. And so one of those...
So we really helped you.
Yeah, exactly. You helped me make my point. So one of the cities that we know is around us is Horizon City.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about Horizon City today. And it's a city I know because back in my previous occupation of a door-to-door salesman, I spent some time in Horizon City. I got to know the folks there. I got to know the city a little bit, but it's an interesting place. It's growing rapidly. We're going to be talking about the city of Horizon City. We're going to be talking about church. We're here with a very special guest. Do you know why he's a special guest, Kenny, on the board?
Do you want me to use my words because you run out of descriptive words?
No. He is the unique expression of an endlessly creative God.
Yes.
That's what makes him special. But he's also the pastor of First Baptist Church, Horizon City.
Nice.
And he has been for over 30 years.
Wow.
That's
dedication. To God.
Yeah, yes, that's impressive. So without further ado, wherever you are, you might be up in Las Cruces listening to 89.3 FM. You might be in El Paso on 1590 AM. Or up in Oro Grande, driving up 54 North. Or you might be in Horizon City. Wherever you are, let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to the one, the only, Pastor Wes Phillips.
Thank you so much.
Pastor Wes, welcome to 915 Talk.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about. Horizon City, though. Horizon City. It's different. It's not what I don't even know how to describe it. When I went there, all I could tell is there was a golf course. And today I started looking on the internet about how Horizon City came to be, and it has an interesting backstory.
Yes, in 1959, as a matter of fact, there was a group called the Horizon Corporation
Okay.
that wanted to build a model city at that time larger than El Paso.
Wow.
And they went out into the desert and they platted individual residential plots for several sections of land and sold those all over the world. I've been in places in Europe, places in Africa, other places that people come from and say, "Oh, I've got a lot in Horizon City," and then the management company went bankrupt, and so all of that land never got developed. So people that have those plots cannot do anything with them unless they're willing to run all of their own utilities there. So it's just an acre of raw land out in the desert that's not usable.
Very day?
To this very day.
To this
very day. There are people that would love to give you their piece of land because they're still having to pay taxes on it, but there's no way that they can develop it or do anything with it. And so it's a curious thing. A lot of people have wanted to give land to our church, but we would have to pay taxes unless we put a worship center on it, and a single residential lot's not big enough for that.
This is so interesting. So the plan was for Horizon City to be bigger than El Paso.
Yes, in a planned community, and it was platted out, and there's still maps of all that exist. And so if you go past Horizon City down Horizon Boulevard to what used to be known as Shadow Mountain Lake, all of that land has been platted. And there have been people from time to time who wanted to come and buy up sections of that, but just finding who owns a lot of it has been a very difficult kind of thing to do. So a lot of it just will continue to sit there.
So you know what this is reminding me of, and I'm going to get the facts wrong, but there was this story of, I believe it was like you could like buy a cereal box, or like a box of cereal, and then you could get a little coupon and you could get a square inch of land in the Yukon.
Right. Well, there's still people trying to sell a piece of property in Scotland that way, that you can have your cubic foot of
I've seen
things
that.
in Scotland.
And then you become a lord or something ridiculous.
That's right. You can become a lord or lady and have your land in Scotland. By the way, I don't know if that's legitimate. I'm not suggesting anybody do that. But the current town of Horizon City, there was a kind of a poor man's country club built around a golf course there. And the original settlers of Horizon City, most of them were retired military. They were retired, but because they were military, they were only 55, 60 years old, still had a lot of good years of life, and they all settled in a community together. And in 88, the subdivisions there decided to incorporate into a town.
Okay.
And so they already had existing subdivisions that weren't part of a town, that they just kind of grandfathered everybody in, regardless of building codes and that kind of thing, and declared it a city. And so Horizon City actually existed as a city since 1988.
Wow.
And so it's interesting that it doesn't have its own school district. Half the town is in the Clint School District, and half of it's in the Socorro Independent School District.
Interesting.
And so a lot of the identity that you would have of a small town and their own school system and that kind of thing doesn't exist in quite the same way. So early on, I showed up in Horizon in 1994, and a lot of the original settlers were still there, but they were getting on up in years.
Sure.
And so inside the community, there was a very tight community mindset, and sort of the people there all knew each other, and it was their little community, and they had a lot of control. It was very interesting. They wanted all the utility lines to be run underground so they would not be an eyesore, but they did not want any street lights because I was told by one of the old-timers, if you have street lights, people after work will park under the street lights and drink beer together. And we didn't want that.
I think that's in the book of Second Opinions.
And so anyway, in the early days that I was there, kids in the winter would come home from school. And, if they had activities, they would be, they'd go to a high school somewhere else. They'd be dropped off at a local school. And you had to walk home in the dark. There were no street lights in Horizon City.
Well, the kids would walk home in the dark, but people were not drinking beer in their cars after dark.
That's right. Nobody was doing that on the corner stops there.
Yeah.
But a lovely group of people.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the original people there, the early mayors and people like that, are people I had the privilege of getting to know. And the church that I'm at, when I first came there, nearly everybody in the church was at least 70 or 80 years old. Mm-hmm. We had one gentleman who was 69, and he was in the young adult class because you had to be 70 years old to be in the adult class. It's a true story.
They checked his birth certificate, and they're like, you're not ready yet.
So it was very, very interesting.
Uh-huh.
And the first 3 or 4 years I was there as pastor, I actually did a number of funerals. A lot of people there, as they began to die off, when they asked me to be their pastor, they basically just wanted someone to babysit the church for 5 years until they died, and
till they went on to glory.
I could give them a funeral and would be done.
Wow!
And so the Lord had different plans.
Yeah.
And the people there were very, very good to me. Sweet people.
Right. It's so interesting to me because I love hosting this program. I love learning, and our regular listeners know that I do only a small amount of research before these conversations, just enough to get myself in trouble so that I can learn together with the listener as we're having the conversation. I'm not an expert on any of this, but what you're telling me about Horizon City is so interesting. But I did see on the internet that one of the people involved with setting it up as a planned community was the person who designed Brasilia, the capital of Brazil,
right,
which is like kind of like this futuristic community that I think worked. I've seen pictures of it. It still is the capital of Brazil. But in Horizon City, it didn't work. And I want to make sure I understand what happened. Because what you told me is there was a company that set up a planned community. People bought parcels. The company went belly up. And now there's not a way to get so that you lost the ability to put utilities out to your land. Is that what happened?
Because there is no subdivision that can be developed at this point there. There are some places where some of that will be taken by eminent domain.
Okay, so we can do that.
Just to establish roadways, for example.
Right.
And that kind of thing. But, it's a difficult situation for most of the people that whatever they paid for the land is money that they completely lost.
Right.
No way to recover that, really. By the way, if you have to pay taxes on that, I think the taxes are like $5 a year or something like that. It's not much.
Well, I think a lot of people heard that who live in El Paso, and they now want to move out to Horizon City.
Well, there is other property that can be purchased in Horizon, but that property is considerably more expensive now than it used to be in the old days.
I can only imagine.
Real estate values in Horizon have increased significantly in the last 10 years.
Probably exponentially.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to look at a community like that. And before we came on air, you told me that when you moved there, it was a population of 3,000.
Yeah, just about 3,000. They had a sign at the front of town that said 3,000 and change.
You're right. And it's grown since then.
Talking to the mayor this week, he said we have about 24,000 people in Horizon. Mm-hmm. They expect that to be at least 40,000 in the next 10 years, maybe as many as 48,000. The other thing is Horizon City has a lot of property that is not inside the city limits.
Okay.
that people would still consider to be Horizon City.
Okay.
And so the property all the way around Horizon City, except for headed east, which appears to be north from the interstate, all of that property is in El Paso's extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Okay.
So in terms of planning and zoning, Horizon City cannot annex that unless El Paso says it's okay.
Oh.
And if any of that has a commercial tax value, for example, where you put in Amazon,
Yeah.
El Paso is not going to release
Give
that
that
for
up.
Horizon City to
Yeah.
get the money out of that. So
Right.
there are limits to what you can annex. Technically, you can't annex more than 10% of your surface area of your existing municipality at a time anyway. And in some cases, some of the properties that are adjacent to Horizon City, if it's only residential, the cost of providing services is more than the revenue that residential property taxes generate.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not much of incentive to actually incorporate that into the city limits. It's
Interesting.
kind of a tricky thing to figure out.
Yeah, it for sure. And I would think it's also a tricky thing to figure out a church's ministry with a city that's expanding this way, that is going through all these different, facing all these challenges. I definitely want to talk about that. But you mentioned that half the city is in the Clint School District, Independent School District. The other half is in Socorro, Independent School District.
That's correct.
Yeah, and is there any talk of Horizon creating its own school district?
Not that I've heard of. I think it would be too hard to do that. The things that already exist, it's just easier to stay with what's there.
Mm.
And the new admin building for Clint, I mean, it's not brand new. It's been there a number of years now, but it's built in Horizon City instead of in Clint. And some of the Clint residents were like, we don't appreciate this being the Clint Independent School District and you're building the administrative building in Horizon City.
Yeah.
But the reason they did that was just the number of students in the Horizon area exceeded the number of students that they had in the Clint area. And if they had more schools and more students to attend to in Horizon, it made more sense for them to be located in Horizon than Clint.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure the people in Clint still are going, excuse me, it ought to be at our place.
Well,
And
sure.
I get that.
Yeah, that's understandable. One of the things we talk about a lot on this program, somehow it pops up pretty often, especially when we have like city reps in and that kind of thing, is walkable cities, creating community, interaction among people so that we aren't just living a lonely life, isolated, working via Zoom and ordering our groceries even online, never going outside. It would be interesting to look at Horizon and how does community happen when there's all these different factors at play?
Horizon City still has a small town feel to some extent. There are several annual events there that happen that give it kind of a sense of identity. There's always a big Christmas parade. The local law enforcement and the police department and fire department combine together for National Night Out.
Okay.
And that's a big event in the city. Nearly everybody, shows up for that and comes out for that. They have other little festivals from time to time and things that the community supports very, very well. And there still is even though the schools are not in the same district, and in some cases they're not in the same like classification that you've got some bigger schools and smaller schools, there still is inside those school communities a lot of pride for their own local tribe, if you will.
Sure.
And there is a recognition among the other people in Horizon that these things exist. But
Sure.
It's really a pretty great place to live.
Yeah.
I've got very strong connections to the fire department there. I'm actually their chaplain.
Okay.
And I've been involved in a number of things with the police department as well. And one of the great things about Horizon City is if you want to get to know the people in the fire department or the police department or the people in city council, you can get to know them and know them by name. And there's still the opportunity for that. And,
that's very cool. Yeah.
And when I first came to Horizon City, the police department there really only had one or two people that were paid in the police department from that police department. Everybody else was somebody else in law enforcement that was picking up extra hours that they would come and be part-time officers
Gotcha.
in Horizon City to pad their income.
Right.
Kind of like the guys that go to Walmart right now, just get a
Right.
little extra pay. I'll go out there
Sure.
on the weekend and do a little work and that kind of
course.
thing. And as the town began to grow, Walmart coming in was a big push to additional revenue in the area. But they have a very fine police department now, and their fire department is actually one of the best trained and best equipped fire departments anywhere.
Wow.
But it's still considered a volunteer fire department.
Interesting.
Because if you want to be a firefighter, they're trying to get to a place where everybody can be paid. But if you want to be a firefighter in Horizon, your first year as a rookie is all volunteer. You don't get any pay at all. And then if you do get paid, there are pretty high expectations. Everyone who is a firefighter is expected to be an EMT paramedic within 3 years of the time that they come on.
Very cool.
But great people, good people.
Excellent.
And,
Excellent. If you just joined us, we're with Pastor Wes Phillips. He's at First Baptist Church in Horizon City. Love learning about these communities around us. And this is your daily reminder that you can listen to this conversation again starting tomorrow. We always post it the next day. The website is desertvoice.media. 915 Talk is a Desert Voice Media production and is listener supported. You can just go on there and click on that donate button and be a part of the journey as we learn to love our city, love our community, and love our neighbors. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice Media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right. That's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
915.
Testify.
I was 10 years into a 20-year bid in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, doing 23 hours a day in a cell, solitary confinement. I was at a breaking point in life where I was just hopeless, depressed. I couldn't find no peace. It brought me to my knees in a prison cell, and I met Jesus. He delivered me from addiction, from a life of crime, the gangs, from evil, wicked ways. To the gang member that's lost, to the drug addict, Jesus loves you, and no matter what you've done in this world, in this life, the doors are open. When I met Jesus Christ, he touched my heart in a powerful way. I was once a heroin addict, a thief, an all-around bad person. My name is Daniel Chavez. I'm from Central El Paso, and I just want the world to know that if he did this for me, he could do it for anybody.
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb.
And by the word of their testimony.
KELPradio.com. We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
We are back, and you are listening to 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Freck, and today we're with Pastor Wes Phillips. He's the pastor over at First Baptist in Horizon City. Horizon City, of course, is just over on El Paso's east side. We learned a little bit about the history of Horizon City. Super interesting, a little bit bizarre. I think that's fair to say. And I love the fact, Pastor Wes, that you know your city. I think a lot of people who are in ministry are so focused on their ministry of what they're doing that they can lose sight of what's going on around them, the community, and just being a part of it. I love the fact that you're the chaplain for the fire department, and you understand all these different interactions that are happening in the city. I want to ask you a little bit about First Baptist Horizon City. The city has grown 8 times in the past 30 years since you've been the pastor there, from 3,000 to 24,000. When you first came into the pastorate, you said that most of the people there were a part of the original community of Horizon City, and were just on golf carts looking to go into glory, is my understanding. So how did you navigate those years of course you're shepherding the flock, pastoring the church, but how do you do that with a backdrop of a community that's changing so quickly?
Well, the original people that were there weren't interested in their community changing or growing that much at all, but it happened anyway. And in a lot of ways, I think Horizon City right now is in its teenage years. And what I mean by that is, when you hit 13, 14 and you're trying to figure out who am I going to be and what am I going to look like and what's my life going to be, Horizon City is making a transition from who we used to be to who are we going to be and what's that going to look like. And honestly, there are different groups that have different ideas of how they'd like to shape that. But there have been a lot of transitions. So when I first came to Horizon, I had been a youth minister for a long time, but I'd never been pastor.
Okay.
And so I was so excited to be a pastor. It's kind of like, hey, I made it out of the minor leagues. I'm in the big leagues now, and
right.
I'm a real pastor. And you are excited about the opportunity for that. And I would meet people in El Paso, and they want to know who you are and where you're from and what you're doing. And I would tell them, oh, I'm a pastor. And they would go, where? And I would say, Horizon City. And they would go, where? And I would say, at the Baptist Church. And they would go, oh.
What does that mean?
And, that happened to me maybe 10 or 12 times. And I thought, this is not good. And so on a Wednesday night, we had the super faithful, I'm there all the time, you're not going to move me, but it's Wednesday night and I'm going to show up crowd. And
even if Jesus comes back, we're going to meet on Wednesday
well,
night.
the ones that could still drive and get there. Not everybody could be there Wednesday night.
Sure.
But I just told them about that experience and told them, and then the people go, oh. And I said, what do you think that means? And all the defensiveness in the world came out.
Interesting.
And, comments like they don't have a right to judge us. They don't know what's going on in here. They should, all sorts of things. And I thought, wow, I poked a sore place here.
Right.
But at the end of that, I told them, I said, I found you to be wonderful people, but I'm telling you that the people outside the walls of this church don't know anything about who we are. And the other thing that you need to know is that we have a bad reputation in our community.
Interesting.
And that's a hard thing to hear. But there had been a church fight a little bit before that. There had been a pastor that asked to leave before, and I said, all of those things, this is a small community.
People know.
Everybody in town not only know that happened, but they know the names of the people involved. And I said, somewhere, we've got to become involved in our community. And so I know that your ministry is very tied to Jeremiah 29. And in Jeremiah 29, where it says that you need to seek the welfare of the city
Amen.
that I've sent you to.
Right.
Because in its welfare, you'll have welfare.
Yeah.
And at that point, I felt like one of the things we needed to do was to try to have a voice in the community that was positive and that was encouraging. And, if your church closes up and nobody in town misses it, somewhere you haven't been doing what you were supposed to do to begin with.
Right.
And so there needs to be something that you can do outside the walls of your church. So One of the just kind of core value things that we teach at our church over and over and over is that if this is your church family, whether you're actually a member or not, if this is where you go and this is the place you would call my church, then in that case, you need to have a minimum of 2 ministries. Everyone who's there, if this is your church, you need to have a minimum of 2 ministries. One of those, you need to be doing something that is a benefit to the local body of Christ. So in other words, if this is your church, what are you doing to help the ministry of this church?
Right.
Whether that's carrying out the trash or sweeping the sidewalks or pulling weeds or whatever, there's something that you can do to strengthen the ministry of this church. But beyond that, there should be another ministry that you have that is completely outside the walls of this church.
Right.
That somewhere there ought to be something in the community. Your community ought to be blessed and benefit because you're here.
I couldn't agree with that more. I want to dive into that, but first we have Charlie 1 on the phone. Charlie 1, how you doing this afternoon?
Well, I'm doing okay, except for struggling with a bad cold. Went to the doctor, and he just said, I thought I had COVID or something. But he said it was just a very, very bad cold that I have. So I'm under medication and everything. And so when my voice goes, I start coughing, then you know why this is happening.
We don't want to hear that, Charlie 1. Is there any traffic in Horizon City today? We're talking Horizon City.
Horizon, let me check. Okay, there's one hazard here in Horizon. That's only one that I see there. Gateway East at Horizon, we have the right lane taken away there. That's for construction there, Gateway East at Horizon. So just give them plenty of room there, Gateway East at Horizon. Then aside from that, Gateway East in Americas, which is kind of close to Horizon, right lane taken away there, but mostly it's Gateway East at Horizon. But Andy, the main trouble spot, really congesting traffic, is Joe Battle northbound lanes at Montwood. We have a crash involving an 18-wheeler. All lanes are closed here on Joe Battle and left 2 lanes on Montwood. So what we see here is just a lot of congestion, a lot of slowdown right there. But other crashes going on. Gateway West at Copia, we have a crash. Gateway North at Trans Mountain on a crash. Lee Trevino and Ivanhoe, we have a crash here. Pendale and Rojas on a crash. I-10 East at East Lake, and this might affect the Horizon also. I-10 East at East Lake crash just happened. And also Alameda, Loop 375 in Alameda, we have a crash there in the valley. And just caution in these areas. Andy, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie 1. You know what would make you feel better?
What's that?
Some daily menudo from Mi Pueblita Cafe.
You're right. That daily menudo, hot stuff, and just clears out everything. And so I got to keep that in mind there. The menudo there. Plus, aside from that, we have Mexican plates, seafood, menudo every day, the vegetarian options, Mi Pueblito Cafe, 3120 Traywood. And Andy, back to you.
Well, Charlie 1, I hope you feel better soon, and we'll talk soon. And we're back. We're with Pastor Wes Phillips of First Baptist in Horizon. And before we had the traffic report, you were talking about the people in your church. You encourage them, exhort them, require, I don't know what the right word is, but to have 2 ministries, one in the church and one in the community. So what would that look like for someone?
Well, the idea from that comes back to, you remember in the story of Jacob, that Jacob wound up having to get away from Esau and went to Laban. And the Bible says that God blessed Laban because Jacob was there. And so in the same kind of way, if you're part of the body of Christ, there ought to be a benefit to your community, to your state, to the place that you work, because you're there. And so we don't try to create the objects and the places that people are going to be placed for that. We just encourage them to allow the Lord to find for them some place of ministry.
Right.
And so there is the people that are the core of our church that have been there for a few years, nearly all of them have a ministry that they're involved in. We have some ladies that do a sewing ministry. They've made dresses for a children's home in Guatemala.
Very cool.
We have, we've got a gentleman that runs the truck stop ministry for this area. Jim Combs, a wonderful guy. We've got 2 or 3 people that are involved in prison ministry. Our church has 2 Fellowship of Christian Athlete huddles that we sponsor, one at East Lake and one at Horizon High. And typically one of those huddles runs maybe 30, 35, 40 kids. The one that we have at Eastlake is running over 200 kids.
Wow.
And so a ministry that we stepped into that we had no idea would get that big, we're feeding once a week 250 kids.
A lot of pizza.
And that's a lot of pizza, and that's a lot of money to pay for all that pizza.
Of course.
And so it's a little bit bigger than we are, but God has been good. He's blessed that. We have people that, we've had some people that their thing for the community is just to go out and to pick up trash. We have a lot of people. I've got people that have got ministries of their own that they just run on the internet, that kind of thing. So somewhere, you may have a neighbor that's a widow lady and she can't mow her grass, but you could go cut her grass when you cut yours. Or you could take a meal to somebody that's not able to get in and out of the house that much, or take someone to a doctor's appointment. Somewhere there's something that you could do that would be a benefit to the people around you, and we just encourage that.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of cases that assignment finds the person as much as the person finds an assignment. They fall into a place where they're comfortable, in a place they can help.
Yeah, you did not choose me, but I chose you.
Yeah.
And you made a very simple statement, but I think it's powerful and worth repeating. That the place you live should be better because you're there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we can lose sight of that. I was a missionary for many years, and so I'll put it on missionaries even. Often a missionary will go to a city, go to a country, and immediately just begin a project.
Right.
And they get so deep into that project that they don't get to know the people. And that's why it's important for us to be out in the community, learning, go to a community event, go to the Christmas parade, just be there, be present, and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first came to Horizon, of course, I was very green. I hadn't been a pastor. I'd been a staff member for a long time, but there's a big difference between being a lead pastor and a staff member.
Oh, yeah.
I think staff members think, oh, no, I know all about that. I've got that. But people that have been pastors will just kind of laugh and go, no, you really don't. But I came here, and there was baggage that I had. Everybody always has baggage.
Right.
But I'd always been told, you need to start on time. You need to be on time. When people are not on time, they're that's disrespectful and that kind of thing. So at my church, I would start on time, and 15 minutes later, I'd get to start again. And that frustrated me terribly. I thought, these people don't have a real commitment to the Lord. They don't have, they're not doing anything. And I had a friend that I went to lunch with one day who was in the ministry, and just as I was leaving Horizon City to meet him, he said, hey, I've got a friend from the Dominican Republic who's in town. Is it all right if he comes? I said, sure. And come to find out, this guy had been a missionary in a lot of places in Central America and had just come back from the Dominican Republic. And we had our meal, and we're kind of getting acquainted, and it was a delightful, wonderful time of fellowship. And at the end of that, decided to have a cup of coffee and sit there a minute or two more. And it was at that point where this missionary says, of all the foreign countries I've ever lived in, El Paso was always my favorite. And I responded to that the same way you just did. I just laughed. I thought that's the funniest thing that I've ever heard. But I went home and I thought about that, and I thought, if I went to Bolivia or Kazakhstan or Peru or some other place as a missionary, I would take a little time to understand the culture and understand the people. And it dawned on me that the day that I came to Horizon as a pastor, that they did not run a ad in the El Paso newspaper that said, hey, gang, Wes Phillips is in town. Everybody needs to be on time now. And when that happened, just a light went off, and I realized I need to stop approaching my job as a pastor, and I need to approach my job as a missionary.
Yes.
And I need to understand that I'm in a new culture now, and I need to be friends, and I need to work within my culture instead of working against it, and change my ministry. It changed my ministry.
It's so interesting, and I love you sharing these things. It's we had a pastor here in his name's Christian Gorola.
I know Christian. He's a good friend.
Yeah, so he was talking about when they first planted the church in downtown El Paso, they kind of did an inventory of how they're really serving the community, and the only thing that they could come up with was they kept their dumpster unlocked, which was a great moment of self-deprecation, of course, for him to share that. But I love this idea of churches just not accepting the status quo, not just accepting this idea that we get together for meeting, but we're part of a community that we're here to serve, we're here to make it better. So I love you sharing these things. We're about to go into a break. We're with Pastor Wes Phillips. He's First Baptist Horizon City. We're learning all about the crazy story of that community and as it's in its teenage years, as you said, and finding its way forward. Super interesting to learn about. I just want to take a moment to thank KELP Radio Impact Partner Caring Companions. If you have an elderly relative who needs some assistance at home, check out caringcompanionsep.com. Really good folks over there. I have some friends who use them. They speak very highly of them. Or maybe you just need a break from time to time, and why not just find out if that'd be a good fit for your family. So again, thank you to Caring Companions. We're going into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Are you looking for a Bible teaching church on the west side of El Paso? This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel Sun City and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. here on this station. Calvary Chapel Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org. The Lord bless you, my friends. Hey, KLP listeners, this is Pastor Terry Gray of Calvary Chapel Sun City on El Paso's west side. I want to invite you to join me at a new time at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on KELP. If you're driving home at 5 p.m. or doing work around the house or getting your evening started, I invite you to join me as we go through the Bible, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. There is nothing more valuable than the Word of God, so let's invest our time in learning more about it together each day. That's our Bible study program, Summons, each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on KELP.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
We're back, and you are listening to 915 Talk. I am your host, Andy Frecker. We're here with Pastor Wes Phillips of First Baptist Horizon City. I don't even think that everyone in El Paso knows where Horizon City is. It's like past East El Paso. It's on the east side. It's its own city. It's its own community. But quite a interesting story. If anyone has free land in Horizon City, let me know. I'll be happy to take some and cover those property taxes, because I feel like that community is going to continue to grow. But super fun. And during the break, you were talking about being in a city that's growing that dynamically, how a church will often experience turnover. And what did that look like for First Baptist?
In our particular situation, I've been there a long time, but I've been the pastor of multiple churches just at one location. We tend to attract families that are tied to the military or tied to law enforcement.
Okay.
And because of that, they typically are going to be moving someplace else within 3 years.
Right.
And so the turnover in our church, in a typical year, we will have to grow by 30% just to break even. We'll lose about a third of our congregation in a year, which
every year.
Is every year.
Right.
And so trying to staff leadership positions and trying to minister to the needs of people and to get to know them in such a tight little frame of time is sometimes challenging.
Well, I mean,
And-
I would think people are coming in that you want them to get plugged in. You want to give them responsibility, but you don't know them yet.
Well, yeah, and so you have to create channels of places where there is something that you can do. So every Friday we have a prayer tent that we just set up on our parking lot, and anybody driving by can stop by and we pray.
Mm-hmm.
And you would be surprised the response to that there are a lot of
Interesting.
people that they know that exists. We'll have that for the National Day of Prayer. We'll do that all day.
Right.
And so there are some ministries that are easy to get plugged into like that, or to just help with things. But typically, I kind of think of our church as being a spiritual MASH unit, like the old MASH TV show.
Okay.
That we're out on the front lines someplace, and we're picking up people that are wounded and damaged, and in some cases people with no church background at all.
Right.
I had a lady that came to our church Sunday before last. She'd never been to a church service.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that people like that existed still today, but
Right.
that was her story. And so we find people that they're involved just in very hurtful places or wounded places. And by the way, some of them were wounded by a church,
Right.
or wounded by Christians. And we bring them in, we accept them as they are, we love them into a better position. And as they grow and mature in the faith, then about the time that they're really good for the kingdom to be leadership, God says, you're absolutely right, you've accomplished your goal, and I'm sending them to Des Moines, or I'm moving them to Florida, or they're
Right.
headed to Maryland. So if the Lord does that, then usually what we send out and what we pick up to replace them, we're starting back over with somebody that's in the wounded, I'm hurting, I need a place to heal. And so
Right.
we're a spiritual MASH unit. We're going to
Right.
help you get there. So we're the place that you come to find out where you're supposed to be.
Right. I love it. Love it. And it's an interesting challenge. You've been doing this for more than 30 years. I think we need to go to a special part of this program, Pastor Wes Phillips of First Baptist Church in Horizon City.
Okay.
And Kenny on the board will cue us up. It's where I ask rapid fire questions, and you answer them as quickly as you can. And because we're Christian radio, we believe in right and wrong answers. But also because we're Christian radio, we try not to be judgy if you give a wrong answer.
I believe in grace.
Yeah. That's right. So do we, but we're not always successful. So without further ado, Kenny on the board, cue up the lightning round. So Pastor Wes Phillips of First Baptist Church, Horizon City. First question. It's a culinary question. It's a question you're asked often when you go out to eat. Red or green?
Tamales, red pork, enchiladas, green chicken.
That is correct. Question number 2. So we've been talking Horizon City. Where is a place in Horizon City that you like to answer that question?
La Pasadita restaurant.
Okay, so you have some good Mexican food in Horizon City.
We do.
You do. Okay. And what's it called again?
La Pasadita.
La Pasadita. Okay. All right. And then if someone were coming to Horizon City and you wanted to impress them, they've never been to Horizon City ever before, where is a place that you would take them?
It's going to be a strange answer, but probably to the fire station.
The fire station. Tell me more.
They have some phenomenal equipment, and they have a wonderful setup for what they're doing, and it's a surprise just to see that that's there. It's more than you would expect it to be.
Love it, love it. If you could join, I don't know, the churches in Horizon City together and have a prayer meeting and pray for one thing, knowing that God will answer that prayer, what would that prayer be?
It would just have to be that Jesus Christ would be known and that people would respond to him. How do you think Horizon City would change if people
knew Jesus in that way? What would you see? Like, what would the difference be?
Generally, Horizon City is pretty polite, but I think it would be more polite.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people that are doing work at your house would be honest in the work that they do.
Mm-hmm. Has that been an issue?
That's an issue everywhere in El Paso. If you
Right.
can be taken advantage of, you should be. That's kind of a mentality for a lot of contract labor.
Right. Right. Do people in Horizon City really see themselves as being part of El Paso, or do they see themselves as being Horizon City?
Whichever one is more convenient at the time.
Mm.
And sometimes we're part of El Paso, and other times we're like, no, I'm not El Paso. I'm going to put my hand up and say, no, I'm push back against that, and I'm in Horizon City.
Whatever's convenient, yeah.
Right.
So we're here in the borderland, the world's largest borderplex. I always say that at the beginning of the program because it's kind of cool. And then in the intro to the program, we have this phrase, the world is looking at El Paso, or the borderland. What will we say to the world? And the question really is this. What is something about El Paso, Horizon City, the borderland, that people who are not from here don't understand about this community?
That there is a place for you here, and that you can be seen, and you can be accepted. El Paso is a very cosmopolitan place.
Mm-hmm.
We have a large German community here. We have a large Jewish community here. There's a large Mennonite community across the border.
Right.
There are a lot of differences, large Korean community. I'm very good friends with the pastor of Grace Chinese Church. And so I think one of the things about El Paso is that you can be from anywhere and have any kind of background, and you can still be at home in El Paso.
Love it. It is such an interesting community. It's just of course everyone says the United States is a melting pot, but in a lot of areas in the United States, the melting has already happened. Here it's still happening, so we see it, and we're living through it right now. So interesting. So Horizon City will continue to grow?
At this point, there's not many places El Paso can grow.
Yeah.
Between the border to Mexico, the border to New Mexico, and the military installations, if El Paso is going to grow, it's going to have to grow towards Horizon City. There's no place else to go.
Right. Is the older community in Horizon City okay with the growth? Do they welcome it, or is it just considered to be, I don't know?
It's just inevitable. You don't have a choice. It is what it is. So we don't have a choice about whether we're going to grow. The only choice we have is about what that's going to look like and how we're going to grow.
Right. So getting back to First Baptist Church, Horizon City, what is your dream for 5 years from now? As this growth continues, you'll be 35 years there. So what is this going to look like?
I don't have any way of knowing that because I don't know who will be in my church then. I'll have a completely different church than I have now.
Mm-hmm.
My only hope is that we'll continue to be faithful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I ever want to be part of a mega church kind of thing. On the one hand, it's really nice to build big buildings, but I know a lot of church buildings that are really big that are empty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do that. I probably
Right.
would have a greater heart for investing in some home Bible groups or in starting new congregations. And we've got 2 services in English, 1 in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had another large ethnic people group, we'd start a service for them.
Sure.
At our place as well.
Yeah.
And so I want at the end of that for us to be faithful, whatever that means.
Right.
I don't know what that'll look like.
Love it. So, Pastor Wes, really appreciate you coming in today. I think, before we went on air, you shared with me a little bit about your personal journey. During a different break, I said, hey, let's have you in again, and we'll talk through that in more detail. I think people need to hear about your journey. Our listeners, it's not easy, but you see God's faithfulness throughout it. But you showed so much interest in your own community that we just talked about that for most of this hour together. So I really appreciate you coming in and sharing about your heart for the city.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to be here, and I'm blessed to be sitting across the table from you.
Yeah, so look forward to you coming in again. Love your heart for Horizon City, and to those of us who are here in El Paso, especially Kenny on the board and Mac Daddy Del Norte, let's get to know our neighbors, not just our neighbors who live next door to us, but let's get to know the towns around us. Let's get to know the history, the challenges, and as we always say at the end of this program, let's learn to love our city, love our neighbor, and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. In order to listen to previous editions of 915 Talk, just visit desertvoice.media. Let's learn together to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.
I'm Johnny, and God has used my affliction